Welcome to the Company Growth Podcast.
This is the Company Growth Podcast. This is Alicia Dominico.
I'm your host, Alicia Dominico.
Don't be afraid to do things you don't know.
Chad Guziewicz, thank you for being on the Company Growth Podcast today.
No problem. Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
I'm super excited to speak to you because you are like a mega entrepreneur in my mind. You've got Tire Wizards / Dealer Plus already accredited to you as an amazing company you run. And now you've just launched Rentify.house, which is a really cool product to help tenants and landlords, maybe I want to say, love each other a little bit better and more longer term.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, and so Rentify is this new product. So you've got these two companies you're involved in. They're both SaaS-based tech companies. You're running them in Ontario, out of the Belleville-Quinte area. Yes. Tell me about what it's like to start a second company after you've already launched a really successful SaaS company previously.
What I have to tell you is, the first time I did it, I really didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah, like so many of us.
Yes. So like doing it for a second time, there's a lot of lessons that I learned from the first one that I've implemented in the second one, where I wouldn't do the same mistakes. And I'm pre-prepared and thinking ahead of time instead of fumbling somewhat through the first one.
I love that. I mean, that's what this whole thing is about. I think growing pains are actually necessary. Talk to us about some of those maybe specific instances of where you felt like you were fumbling and you've cleaned it up the second time round.
So the biggest thing is I'm trying to surround people around me that are going to help me move it farther ahead. Instead of having, I used to be part of my main people used to be accountants, lawyers, and stuff like that as partners. I mean, you don't really need that. You can hire those types of people. You want to have people around you that are going to help you grow your sales force and people that are going to help you build champions of the product. So that's kind of the difference. I'd rather surround myself with those types of people and incentivize them to help me grow the business.
100% agree with you. I mean, I think one of the things, that I'm always championing is that the CEO, the entrepreneur, has to be the best and the leader of the sales force, but you've got to grow that the fastest so that you can leverage everything else. Unless you're doing something where, you have to really look at, well, I suppose with Rentify, you have to look at some legal stuff and you have to look at some financial stuff, but usually you set that path and you just stick to that course. You don't need to continually be revising it or redoing it, whereas you need to be continually selling and marketing.
Exactly, because without sales, you don't really have a business at the end of the day. You can build whatever product you want, but if you don't have a user base that actually wants to use it, then you're not really doing it. It's more of a hobby. And what I tell a lot of entrepreneurs today is that the first thing you should do before you build any business is go see your customer.
And tell me more about what you mean by that. How do people go and see their customer in like 2020?
So if you want to build, for an example, for Rentify that we did is we went and literally sat down with the property management and landlords and said, hey, this is kind of our concept of what we want to build. And all we did was screens and different things and said, based on what we think the flow could be, what do you guys think of this? And at the end of the day, your customer is going to tell you exactly what they need and whether there's a market there. Before you spend a whole bunch of money building a product, you want to make sure that what you're building is what they need.
And do you think people are hesitant to do that because they all watch The Social Network, and that's essentially what those two brothers did when they went to the Facebook guy, and then he basically took it for his own? Is that why people don't do that? Are they worried? Is it scarcity mentality that someone's going to take it?
You know what the truth is if you go and see a customer, it tells you whether your idea is real or not.
Yes.
So if you can find somebody that's going to pay you for something, because the markets always tell you the truth, right? Whether or not you could believe, just like your house, that it's worth 700 or $1 million, but really the market's going to tell you actually it's only worth 500 or whatever the price is. So you go and meet the customer, you bring them your idea, they're going to tell you whether or not they want it or not. And that's what people are kind of somewhat afraid of, is that maybe their idea really isn't a need in the marketplace.
And better just find that out sooner than later.
Yes.
Do you find that, I mean, what I like about this model is that because you went to your customers first and you discovered this need, and I don't know if you had, to protect yourself, did you have some kind of memorandum of understanding, an MOU as to why you were talking to them about this idea?
Actually, I'm a big fan of Gary Vee. I don't know if you've ever watched him in different things. A lot of people, you can bring them ideas. 99% of the population is not going to execute on it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, unless you're meeting like super crazy entrepreneurs, like the likelihood of them building something that you're thinking about is very unlikely. And plus, they're not going to have the same vision you have of building a product. You're going to tell them an idea, but actually executing is so small and minuscule of them actually building what you want to do.
Yes. And so now you have, because you spoke to those customers ahead of time and they said what you wanted and you went and built it, you seem to have, with Rentify, walked right into being able to sell immediately to those customers and get early adopters.
Exactly.
And do you want to talk about like how you did that? Or is this different to how you did Tire Wizard though? Because it sounds a little bit like you might have done that also with Tire Wizard.
We did, but more fumbling. More
fumbling because you weren't really sure about what?
About whether or not the product was right. We didn't really know what we were doing. It was kind of like, you just went there and said, hey, what do you think of this crazy idea? And then you did it. But this way, when we did Rentify, it was way more planned out. We went to the business leaders. They said, hey, is there anybody in the rental business? We got the connections and set it up and sat down with them and did a presentation. Plus, now that I've done a business before, there's way more credibility than there was in the first time.
Yeah.
People actually listen to you because you were successful the first time. Then, it's tough the first time. Nobody believes what you're saying. Or
that you can actually bring it to fruition and execute it well.
Exactly.
And were your clients from one, I mean, it seems like it's totally different target audiences, but were your clients from one realm helpful to starting the next one? No. So it was a totally different new market, but because you were known in your community, I suppose there's some benefit to being part of a smaller community like Belleville is. Is that part of like the credibility, was people knew you?
Yeah, that's a big thing. You got to think, in Belleville, for me, I would be a big fish. In Toronto, I'd be a nobody, right? So, plus, a lot of startup doesn't happen in smaller communities. So a lot of people want to help it happen because there's just there isn't as much of a culture that way. So everybody's trying to help you more, and people are more friendly in a smaller town than they are in the bigger cities, I find.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting. Like I work a lot with economic developers, and a lot of people don't really understand the power in the economic development and just knowing all the businesses who are out there that you maybe should know about or should connect with along your journey.
No, I agree. And it's just a willingness to learn, and it's constantly learning. At the end of the day, nobody has all the right answers, and all these places are trying to help you, and you're competing with less and less large corporations, which is kind of nice. So when you need the grant money, like you guys work with, it's easier to get access to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like the economic developers can help you and prioritize you amongst the other people in the pile because your community is going to get X dollars and there's fewer of you to be chasing after it.
Yeah, and then I'm not fighting with Bell Canada to try to get some money, right? I'm going to lose that battle, kind of, in a way.
Yeah, which would be another corporation that might be in the pile that you're competing against, and all of their resources and grant writers that they might have. Fair enough. Yes. Okay. So in terms of these salespeople, when you say you surround yourself with a salesperson, what are the skills that you're looking for? Or how do you identify a really good fit person to help you grow a company?
So the number one step before you grow any company is to understand what your strengths and weaknesses are.
Tell me more about that.
So the first thing you have to do is understand what you're good at and what you're not good at.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm typically the sales and operation kind of guy, business driven type of person. The partner I am doing this business with is the technical side.
So he can actually build all the stuff in behind that you need to make it work.
Yes.
Cool.
And And at the end of the day, that's kind of how you have to surround yourself. And honestly, it's like a hockey team. I always want to put the best people around me, and I always want to be the dumbest guy in the room.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like, actually, my father-in-law has a different way of saying it. He says he always wants to know more than his accountant, more than his lawyer, because of the people that you're paying for advice. And I like the idea of when you're working with those types of people, it's good to know and have an angle. But I like the idea of when you're actually trying to sell and grow, that you're thinking about the opposite. You're trying to think about, hiring people who are smarter than you, who bring skills that you don't have.
Yes, and I would agree with that 100%. And there's nothing wrong understanding the topics that you're talking with people, but you want to put the people that understand it so deep with you to help you shape whatever plan you have. It's a marketing plan, it's a sales plan, it's an operation plan. You want them to bring those skills to you. You just need to understand how it works as a general rule. I don't need to be an expert in code, but I understand how technology works.
So I agree. So you have this nice niche. You started off by talking to your customer. You've developed a nice niche and looking at the landlords who are known in the association. So the people who probably have a lot of skin in the game and have a lot of houses that they are renting out. You went there first. How are you going to take it to the next level to expand or to go from good to great in sales?
So what I try to do is I always, after we're done the pilot and we build everything out in the sales plan, is I'm trying to, so the way this model works is similar to the dealer network, is that there's associations all across the country. And like in the dealer world, when I used to sell to like Honda Canada, I would be able to open up to the entire network, so all the franchises. So I seen that same opportunity to help me build the base of the company with those associations and build my way out. And then as you meet each association, you're going to start getting contacts and leads throughout that association, and it'll start opening you up to bigger circles.
And a lot of people see this, this model of finding the river of who had your customer last, and then seeing their network and scaling it across to the people like them. Makes total sense. But some people fail to sort of take action on it and actually like close the deal across those networks. What have you used to be successful as an account closer across, jumping from one association to the next in order to scale your companies?
Follow-up.
Tell me more about that. What does that look like for you?
So what happens is a lot of people give up. Like life is about, it gets hard and you just stop. So most of the time people are busy. We have busy lives. You have a busy life. Everybody probably listening to your podcast is busy. So you have to constantly be reminding people to remind them that you're there.
Yeah.
And constantly following up with them back and forth. Oh yeah, that's important. Or maybe in the moment you were talking to them, it wasn't important to them, but then a problem came up 6 months later. Hey, actually, I actually need your product because this went wrong or this went wrong. And it's just constantly following up with your customer.
Do you have a set of rules? I mean, 100% agree with you, and I think most people do drop off in the follow-up process. It's the critical piece. But do you have a set of rules that you follow as to how much follow-up? Because some people do, they stop 3 feet from gold, so to speak, on their follow-up.
It's never done until they tell you to go away.
Right. So because timing could change.
Yes. Even after that, and people can move from where they are today. Like you go to a large manufacturer or a large property management, that person might move on to another role.
So you got to follow them.
Then you get a new person, and really what you need to push something through is you need a champion, somebody who's willing to make a change, push things forward, and that person might come when that last person left.
How do you identify somebody who's willing to make a change and to be your champion?
That is actually probably the best question somebody's ever asked me before. I guess it's really if they're with you helping you execute the project. Are they willing to help you push it through their organization?
And is that because the need is so deeply espoused just for them, or there's a sense of urgency?
There's two types of people. There's people that are dreamers. So sometimes you got to identify that somebody's a dreamer and somebody that's really detail oriented. So it's harder to get somebody who's very anal on something than somebody that can dream more about, oh, actually how this would help my organization and do things better. Sometimes the detail people are great to have after you execute the idea so that everything gets in place properly.
But you need the dreamers at the start to just see the vision of what you're trying to do.
Exactly.
But then you need the detailed person. So is that because, like, do you think, I mean, because this is an interesting distinction, and I totally put myself in the realm as the dreamer, but I also feel like I have really good follow through. So you need someone to be able to see the dream of what you're trying to do, but you don't want a detailed oriented person at that time because they propose like too many questions or they see too many problems along the way.
Exactly. They might see too many problems all the way through the process. Hey, this might happen, or this might happen.
I fully thought you were going to say the opposite, but yes, keep going.
And they're really, and sometimes I call myself detail plus a dreamer, but you know, some people just get so obsessed with the details that they don't think about the long-term vision of making things better, because sometimes you get into a certain job and this is your job and you're worried that things are going to change within your job, right?
Yeah.
Instead of seeing, hey, this new piece of software or this new process will make my life easier, people get fearful of the change coming in.
There's that scarcity mentality again. Yes, totally agree.
Exactly.
And so getting the dreamer to see the vision is your best champion. That's a great marker of identifying a champion, but also make sure that they've got somebody who can Zamboni behind them and clean up and make things, you know, do the actual follow through when you need it.
I agree with that.
Sometimes you need the dreamer, though, to actually be the detailed person who makes the introductions, like who follows through on the introductions at least, which I think is a critical part of trying to expand.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes people are mixed. They have both, and they have both personalities. And sometimes they're just one personality and the other personality. But it all depends on what you run into and just understanding who the person you're dealing with is.
Yeah, and that's why I think, you know, people are, when I first started out my business 10 years ago, Intangible Words, everybody was like, it's all about your relationships. People are always giving that message in business, right? You read a blog post, you read a book, people talk about relationships. And I was thinking, well, how do you build these relationships, or how do you recognize that it is a relationship when you're just starting out? Do you have any kind of tips to success when you're just starting out and trying to build those relationships? How do you know when it's a good relationship that you can actually trust to help you move and shake things along?
I really try to get people and put them in a path. I try to guide people through a path. That's really my expertise, and say, okay, you're really good at this. What did you ever think of doing this project to make your life easier? Or you're really good at sales. Maybe you should try the sales. I try to reach out to contacts all the time, because an opportunity comes up all the time. Like, I'll call people 300 different types of people at different times, and a random opportunity will show up.
Yeah.
Like, just by talking and to somebody you might have talked 6 months ago to a year, they're like, actually, I have a buddy that's doing this. Maybe you should talk to them. And that's how you get introductions to new sales and different things that are going on.
So even if they don't have a deal for you right now, just still nurturing that relationship, so to speak, calling them up, staying connected, listening to them, shakes the tree and keeps momentum going for you.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I loved having you on today. You said so many things that really align and I think are really inspiring. Is there anything else you want to tell us about company growth?
Just don't be afraid to do things you don't know. Sometimes you can't predict. Truthfully, nobody can predict exactly how fast your company is going to grow, how slow it's going to grow. You just keep pushing through it, and whenever a problem comes up, just try to solve it, and just keep pushing forward, and just keep pushing forward.
How do you keep pushing forward when you don't know what the next right thing to do is, though? How do you do it?
I just believe in what I'm doing and never, that's a good question. I believe in what I'm doing, but I'm willing to change based on what's happened if a new problems come up or different problems come up, I'm not afraid of new or changes or side plannings. And I try to plan out, me personally, three scenarios. One, best case,
Okay.
middle case, and worst case.
Yeah.
And usually 99% of the time it's in the middle.
I like that. I always hear best case, worst case scenario, but I like the middle case. That's a realistic dreamer, detailed person analysis. I agree.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it usually ends up being in the middle.
Yes. And I find, like, when I get stuck as an entrepreneur, the thing that I look to when I have a problem that I can't solve is I always go and I read a book. I'm like, there's got to be somebody who knows this, whether I look on the internet for a blog post or I just, I'm like, I've been meaning to read this book. Let me pick it up and see what's in it. Or let me revisit, like I revisit books like The Platform Revolution and Scaling Up by Verne Harnish and Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm. I'll go back to those books over and over again. Do you do stuff like that?
I do, because it kind of inspires you to re-look at a problem. That's essentially what you're trying to do, is re-look at the problem, even if it's in front of you, and say, actually, what about if I did it this way? And then it's 99% of the time that solves the problem.
Yeah. You just need to get fresh insight and then rejig.
Exactly.
Thanks so much for being on here today. I really thought that was super fun.
Yeah, no problem. It'd be great. And I appreciate you having me on.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much for being here.
No problem. Sounds good.
Okay,
I'll talk
bye.
to you later.
Bye.